Today I'm going to be sharing with you a couple ideas to help with your uneven hip height. What's up everybody, it's Blake Bowman here with Gorilla Zen Fitness, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you a couple ideas that you can employ in your exercise routine to help correct an uneven hip height. So before moving forward, this uneven hip height issue, the technical name for it is a lateral pelvic tilt, and that's how I'm going to be addressing it later in this video. So I'm not going to go too deep into the reasons why if you have a lateral pelvic tilt you want to fix it. But you should know that if you have this and you're not addressing it, it can predispose you to back pain, shoulder issues, and other injuries below the waist, okay? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to come up with the notion that if you have an asymmetry such as that, if you're tilted sideways and you're active and you move like that, your alignment is off and you're going to increase mechanical wear and tear on your joints, and eventually you're going to injure yourself. So I'm not going to touch too much on that. But that is exactly what a lateral pelvic tilt is. Lateral means to the side, and when you have uneven hips and you're like this, okay, your pelvis is tilted sideways, just like that. An interesting thing to note here is that people that have this lateral pelvic tilt or uneven hips are usually going to have two things that come along with it. One is that the shoulder that's on the side that's hiked, let's say my right hip is hiked, the shoulder is going to appear lower too, okay? So you're going to be hiked up here and that shoulder is going to appear down. If you're hiked up on the left side, you're going to have the exact opposite issue. Another thing that you almost always see in somebody with uneven hips or a lateral pelvic tilt is what we call a false leg length discrepancy. So basically they're either self-assessed themselves and came up with the notion that one leg is longer than the other. Maybe they saw it when they were laying down, they looked at their feet, or somebody told them that they had a leg length discrepancy, one leg being longer than the other, and in reality it's just because of the pelvis. The femur, your leg bone, attaches up at the pelvis, okay? So if you're cockeyed like this, the leg that is, or the hip that's hiked, that leg is going to appear shorter just because that leg is pulled up with the hip. So that's a false leg length discrepancy. It makes it look like one leg is longer than the other when it's really coming from the hips. That's not to be confused with a true leg length discrepancy, in which case the bones are actually longer in one leg. That's actually very rare though, and most people out there that think they have a leg length discrepancy, it's actually a pelvic issue. So that's just a fun note to keep in mind before moving forward. In a minute here I'm going to show you a self-assessment that you can go through to determine whether or not you have a leg length discrepancy or a lateral pelvic tilt. Before I do that, I want to talk about a couple causes of a lateral pelvic tilt. And one of the biggest ones, without a doubt, is side sleeping. So if you have a lateral pelvic tilt and you're a side sleeper, then you might want to consider sleeping on your back, supporting your head with an orthopedic pillow. The reason why sleeping on your side is bad is because when you are in that position, your hips are tilted laterally, okay? The hip that's closest to the ceiling is scrunched up and all the tissues in there become scrunched up. And as we know, if we hold any sustained position for long periods of time, those tissues, the muscles and the connective tissue, adaptively shorten and they stay that way. So essentially, if you sleep in a lateral pelvic tilt for 8 hours, you wake up, you're going to be walking around with a lateral pelvic tilt. Another common cause is repeated side bending or leaning, whether it's, you're using one armrest or you're leaning on your center console when you're driving like this, okay? I used to drive like that and really kind of imbalance my core as a result. So you look basically for situations that you might be repeating on a day in and day out basis or holding, and assess the position of your pelvis while you're in those positions. This is for those of you that actually have a lateral pelvic tilt. You want always to have that pelvis be level and symmetrical. Okay, if it's jacked up by a wallet or you're sitting on the side of your car seat and that's pushing one cheek up and the other one's kind of depressed down, all of those things like that, when done on a habitual basis, are potential causes of a lateral pelvic tilt. Alright, so with that being said, a really quick assessment that you can do on yourself. Most people know that their pelvis is kind of jacked up just by the way it feels. But one thing you can do to yourself is get your hands like this, okay? and put them right on top of your hip bones, okay? And then look at that in the mirror, okay? The top of your hip bone is called your iliac crest. You can kind of put your thumb right in there. And then, you know, do this in front of a mirror without a shirt on and look at your pelvis. Look for one side being higher than another. And if you have one thumb up here and the other one's down here, you definitely can take that as a positive confirmation that you have a lateral pelvic tilt, and this hip is the one that's actually hiked up. Okay, so now I want to show you a couple techniques and stretches that you can use to actually fix this. Now these are just general ideas. The pelvis is a very complex area because it has a lot of muscular attachments in it. Okay, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So keep that in mind when you're following this corrective exercise routine. A lot of these exercises are just general, okay? It's going to help most of you that are dealing with this issue, but if you're looking for something more complex and specific to you, then definitely spend the money to go get assessed by a physical therapist. So almost always people with a lateral pelvic tilt are going to experience extreme tightness and restriction in the tissues on the side of the trunk here, right in the oblique area right here, and even coming around the back side on the side that's hiked up. Okay, so all these tissues are going to be really, really tight. Okay, so the main way we're going to address that high hip is by stretching those tissues. An awesome stretch that you can do to create more length in this area is to lay over a stability ball sideways and get your legs really wide to form a nice solid base, and then basically just reach the arm as far overhead as you can. You're trying to create length between the ribs and the pelvis, okay? And be sure that you're only doing this on the side that's hiked up, okay? Again, you're trying to create as much difference between, or much space between the hip and the ribs, really stretching out those tissues in there. Another stretch you can do is a static stretch for the QL, the Quadratus lumborum. I actually made a video on this in the past on addressing back pain, because when this thing gets tight, it can often be a cause of back pain. It can also really hike up that hip. So these are two stretches that are really, really good for that. One involves just sitting in a cross-legged position and then placing the elbow down and then reaching away from the side that's hiked up, okay? And then the second one involves basically getting into a straddle stretch position, opening your legs, and then reaching across your body, grabbing the outside of your foot, okay? It's important to be aware of the anatomy of this muscle, okay? It's right here. It attaches on your bottom ribs and attaches here at your pelvis. So when you're doing those two stretches, think about, again, creating as much distance between the back of your pelvis and that rib, and that's going to put that muscle under a stretch. For all of those techniques, remember you want to be bending away from the hiked hip side, okay? That's going to stretch the tissues on that side. So if you're hiked up on the right, always bend to the left. If you're hiked up on the left, always bend to the right. For each of those, you can hold it for about 2 sets of 30 seconds or more, and do these on a regular basis until the hip comes back down. And then you can stop, because you don't want to contribute to different imbalances. But if it comes back, resume these exercises again. The last thing I want to share with you is sometimes what can happen is on the low side, so let's say you're hiked up on the left, what can happen is the gluteals on the right side are tight, okay, and that's actually pulling the right side down and this side staying tight, okay, so you got this kind of double motion going on here, okay. So what you can do is you can actually sit on a foam roller, put the gluteals, your butt muscles, on the side that's hiked down on a foam roller. You can cross your leg over and then roll out that side and see if it feels a lot tighter than the other side. You want to do both sides for contrast. If it does feel a lot tighter and a lot more painful than the other side, then roll out that side exclusively and take that pain as feedback that that side is tight and it might be contributing to your imbalance. This is something also that you can hold for about 2 sets of 30 seconds, really rolling around on the glutes looking for trigger points. I really hope this video helped you out. If it did and you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, then go ahead and do that right over here. Also, I'm searching for a lot of new content to make for you all, so shoot me your questions, leave them in a comment down below, and I will be sure to respond with a video or a comment. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well as Facebook. I'll include links to both of those things in the description down below. And other than that, as always, I'll see you next time.